Sea's Ghost Fleet represents one of America's most haunting environmental disasters. Created accidentally in 1905 when Colorado River water breached irrigation canals, this once thriving resort destination in Southern California now harbors dozens of abandoned vessels scattered across its receding shoreline. These nautical relics, pontoon boats, fishing vessels, and pleasure craft, have become inadvertent tombs preserving the remains of wildlife caught in the lake's toxic embrace. The sea's unique chemistry contributes to this macabre preservation. With salinity exceeding that of the Pacific Ocean, and contaminated by agricultural runoff rich in selenium, pesticides, and fertilizers, the water creates a remarkable preservative environment. Animals that perish aboard these vessels, mostly birds and small mammals seeking shelter, undergo a process of partial mummification rather than complete decomposition. Urban explorers document these eerie time capsules despite serious health hazards. The air around the Salton Sea contains particulate matter from exposed lake bed, while the boats themselves harbor unstable structures compromised by exposure to the elements. Most concerning are the occasional human remains discovered in makeshift shelters within larger vessels, evidence of homeless individuals who sought refuge in this forgotten place, unaware of the environmental danger. As the sea continues to shrink at an alarming rate due to reduced inflows and increased evaporation, more vessels emerge from its depths each year. These ghost ships serve as silent monuments to human environmental impact and the fragility of engineered ecosystems. In Iceland's isolated communities during the 17th century, an extraordinary magical practice emerged involving human remains: the creation of nabrok, or necropants. These macabre leggings were crafted from human skin meticulously flayed from a deceased man's lower body, from waist to toes, creating a grotesque garment believed to produce endless wealth for the wearer. The ritual's specificity reflects medieval Iceland's blend of pagan practices and Christian beliefs. The prospective practitioner needed explicit permission from a living individual before their death. After burial, the body would be exhumed under cover of darkness during a specific lunar phase. The corpse's lower half would be carefully skinned in one continuous piece, preserving all anatomical features. The skin was then dried and treated with special herbs to maintain flexibility while preventing decomposition. The most crucial element of the nabrok involved stealing a coin from a widow and placing it within the scrotum of the skin pants, along with a magical sign called the nabrokarstafur. According to folklore, this coin would magically attract additional money, filling the scrotum with wealth that never diminished as long as the original coin remained undisturbed. The Museum of Icelandic Sorcery and Witchcraft in Holmavik houses what appears to be the only preserved specimen of nabrok. Whether authentic or a reproduction, it represents one of Iceland's most bizarre magical traditions, a practice demonstrating the extreme measures people would take to ensure prosperity in the harsh conditions of medieval Scandinavian life. In the highlands of Madagascar, the Malagasy people practice famadin, the turning of the bones, a funerary tradition dating back centuries that creates an extraordinary phenomenon observers describe as dancing with the dead. This ceremony occurs every 5 to 7 years when families exhume their ancestors from family crypts for celebration and renewal. The most startling aspect of famadiana occurs during the height of festivities, as families unwrap their ancestors' remains from silk shrouds called lambamena. The decomposing bodies occasionally exhibit spontaneous movement. These leaping corpses result from natural processes, gases building up within partially decomposed tissues or dried tendons contracting when exposed to humid air. But participants interpret these movements as signs that the ancestors are joining the celebration or offering approval. During the ceremony, family members carefully rewrap the ancestors in fresh silk shrouds, often spraying the bodies with perfume or wine. Musicians play traditional instruments while relatives hoist the corpses on their shoulders, dancing in jubilant procession around the tomb. The movement of dancers combined with the occasional twitch or shift of the bodies creates an uncanny spectacle of the living and dead in communion. Madagascar's government has periodically restricted famadiana due to public health concerns, particularly during plague outbreaks, as the handling of corpses can pose transmission risks. Nevertheless, the practice persists, especially in rural areas, as an essential expression of Malagasy cultural identity and their unique understanding of death. Northern Tanzania's Lake Natron presents one of Earth's most inhospitable environments and the source of a remarkable natural phenomenon, the petrification of animals that perish in its waters. This shallow lake, reaching depths of only 3 sodium carbon and other minerals, that create a caustic solution with pH levels approaching 10.5, comparable to ammonia. Animals drawn to the lake, primarily birds like flamingos that feed on the abundant cyanobacteria, occasionally become disoriented by the lake's reflective surface or overcome by its toxic fumes. Upon death, their bodies undergo a remarkable transformation. The lake's alkaline water rapidly calcifies the creature's tissues, essentially turning flesh to stone, while preserving the bodies in the exact position they died. Wings outstretched, legs extended, expressions frozen in their final moment. Photographer Nick Brandt documented these macabre statues in his series Across the Ravaged Land, bringing international attention to the phenomenon. Brandt carefully positioned the petrified animals he found along the shoreline for his compositions, creating haunting tableaux that appear as if the creatures had been instantaneously turned to stone mid-movement. Human remains have occasionally undergone the same transformation, though rarely documented. Local legends tell of unwary travelers who ventured too close to the toxic waters and were preserved by the lake's chemical processes. These natural mummies serve as stark reminders of nature's power to transform death into art. Despite its lethal properties, Lake Natron supports a thriving ecosystem adapted to its extreme conditions. Among India's spiritual seekers, the Aghori sadhus stand apart, with practices that transgress mainstream Hinduism's fundamental taboos. These ascetics, numbering perhaps a few hundred across India, inhabit cremation grounds along the Ganges River, where they perform rituals involving human remains that shock observers, while embodying their radical spiritual philosophy. The Aghoris' most controversial practice, ritual necrophagy, or consumption of human flesh, stems from their interpretation of Advaita Vedanta philosophy, which teaches that all binary oppositions, pure/impure, sacred/profane, are illusions obscuring ultimate reality. By consuming flesh from bodies consigned to the sacred Ganges, typically those whose families cannot afford complete cremation, the Aghori physically enacts this philosophy of non-dualism. Their ritualistic process follows specific parameters. The Aghori first meditates upon a corpse, often sitting directly on it while reciting mantras. After ceremonial preparation, they consume small portions of flesh, viewing this act not as desecration but as the ultimate transcendence of worldly attachment and conventional morality. They fashion ritual implements from human bones, skull cups, kapala, for drinking, femur trumpets, and meditation mats made from skin. Despite their shocking practices, Aghoris maintain a paradoxical reputation in Indian society. While feared and avoided by many, they are sought out by others for their purported magical abilities and healing powers. Their extreme asceticism, including living with minimal possessions and rejecting conventional hygiene, represents total devotion to Lord Shiva, the deity associated with both creation and destruction. Modern Aghoris face increasing pressure from authorities concerned about public health and the ethical treatment of human remains. Beneath the streets of Palermo, Sicily, lies one of the world's most unsettling necroplacises, the Capuchin Catacombs, where a rare chemical phenomenon creates the haunting illusion of eternal grief. The catacombs began in 1599, when local monks discovered their cemetery's unique microclimate, naturally preserved a recently interred brother. This accidental discovery led to the establishment of a vast underground repository that would eventually house over 8,000 preserved bodies, arranged in eerie corridors and alcoves. The most unnerving feature of these mummies is the apparent weeping exhibited by certain corpses. This phenomenon results from a complex interaction between the original embalming chemicals, typically including arsenic, mercury compounds, and plant directional preservatives, and the catacombs' fluctuating humidity levels. As moisture from the air condenses within the mummified tissues, it dissolves and mobilizes these preserved compounds, creating a viscous solution that slowly migrates through the desiccated flesh. In particularly well-preserved specimens, this fluid eventually emerges from facial orifices, most dramatically from the eye sockets, creating tears that appear to flow down leathery cheeks. The chemical composition of these tears includes trace minerals from the original preservation fluids, combined with degraded proteins from the mummified tissues themselves, forming a cloudy, amber-colored liquid. The most famous weeping resident is Rosalia Lombardo, a 2-year-old girl who died in 1920 and whose body shows remarkable preservation due to an innovative embalming technique by taxidermist Alfredo Salafia. Her lifelike appearance, complete with intact blonde hair and seemingly sleeping expression, is periodically enhanced by the emergence of these chemical tears, creating the heartbreaking illusion that she continues to mourn her own premature death a century later. Visitors to the catacombs report profound psychological effects when witnessing these weeping mummies.